Hello and welcome to MaxTheKnife.com. My name is Max and I'm going to provide you with a brief summary and explanation of the research I have published to my website. First, what you're looking at here is a very brief summary of the geometry I've discovered at Cydonia. All of this fell out simply by testing the geometric relationship model first proposed by Errol Torin and Richard C. Hoagland back in the late 80s. Illustrated here is the D&M pyramid in yellow. The fort is highlighted by two red and white lines that happen to be 33.3 degrees. The northeast corner of the city square is highlighted in blue and is a wildly reflective, albeit smaller, version of the D&M pyramid. At 19.5 degrees, in green, we see the face hanging on a cross. Now, all this is possible because embedded in the landscape of Cydonia are a series of sites and markers. These sites and markers lead to an astonishing array of predictions and inescapable conclusions vis-a-vis the symbolism. And here it is, the beginning. This is the perfect 60-degree angle that Torin and Hoagland claimed exists between the face on Mars, the D&M pyramid, and the city square. And what I learned from setting this up was immediately that the city square and the teardrop on the face are sites. Okay, sites and markers. So here I've highlighted several of them. And what is so convincing is that both the D&M and its blue counterpart in the city square were set up independently, yet they are precisely related by exactly 4.7 degrees. The red and white lines are 33.3 and they slip right into the site that is situated next to the fort. As I eventually learned, these lines indicate our solar system's orientation to the galactic equator a very long time ago. So what about that cross on the face? The cross is derived from another huge example of sites and markers. Upon close examination, there is only one way to accurately orient the face when it stands alone. In the upper left is a feature I call the crescent tool. Simply start a line at the tip of that tool and drag it out through the tip of the lion's ear. Again, this assumption can be tested. Simply measure the independent geometry and compare it to the D&M's geometry. This line is exactly 39 degrees, that's 19.5 times 2, from the D&M's axis of symmetry. So, what's the next logical step? Well, the next logical thing to do is drop in a line perpendicular to that and cut the face in two. And what you see in the geometry is irrefutably a cross. And the presence of the cross opens up a huge can of worms because, among many other things, it represents a trinity. So maybe we should start adjusting our perspective and look at the face from every possible point of view. In the middle, there's a clear reflection of a lion. On the left, we see a very hominid-looking face. But on the right, there's no getting around it. It looks like a stereotypical gray alien. And that opens up Pandora's box because the first thing that should resonate with everyone here is the meme that we are created in God's image. Here we can literally see ourselves in God's image. But in case everyone still isn't convinced this is right, upon closer examination of this gray alien face, one discovers a very convincing reinforcement. You discover on the forehead of this gray alien a scarab beetle, and on his chin, just below, you see a lotus flower in full bloom. And upon some very easy research, one discovers that both these symbols are associated with none other than Ra as his younger self. Now, it's important to remember that the geometric model we're dealing with is not a static model. It's dynamic and, of course, it's spinning. So if one dares to spin the reflections on the face and assume, since we're dealing with the Egyptian god Ra, that these reflections represent Horus and Seth, one discovers a series of images that perfectly reflect their famous and contentious battle. The sequence of the battle reveals itself when one realizes that the major events of the battle occur on converging geometric lines from two separate spinning systems. On these converging lines, the eye of Horus is cut out and recovered, the testicles of Seth are castrated, and just before Horus is about to destroy Seth, Isis intervenes and injures Horus. And then, of course, as the story goes, she heals him in the very next step. The only way out of this perpetual battle is through the face of Ra. But what does all this mean? Well, what I keep telling people is, remember, the best reflections are symbolic on multiple levels. And what the face is a symbolic representation of our sun and our consciousness and the real physics that drives it all. Now there's one more pill that needs to be swallowed here with regards to the face. One of my early thesis statements was that the geometry of Cydonia ought to relate to Mars's true north in a very specific, accurate, and meaningful way, just like the pyramids on Earth relate to Earth's true north. What I discovered was a major discrepancy between the images NASA was publishing and the graphics that Hoagland was publishing. Now, the only way to clarify this confusion, the only way to get to the truth and discover true north is through the face on Mars. And it turns out that the face is an extension of the planet, which means you can measure the shadow. And since Mars is tilted at 25.2 degrees from the solar system's ecliptic, we discover that the shadow cast on the face is exactly 25.2 degrees from Mars's true north. In other words, the face doesn't just mean something, it means everything. It is the way, the truth, and the light. What I eventually discovered were 4 strategically placed sphinxes. Now, given the redundant symbolism, it seemed natural to try and arrange them on a cross. Horus is on top, Osiris anchors the bottom, and Seth is on the left and right, indicating motion through the position of the sights, or his testicles. And these sphinxes are in motion and revolving around their beloved Isis, the burning heart of Cydonia. Here he is, the Sphinx of Horus, found on the face. This is Mars Global Surveyor data that was overlaid with a false color infrared, and that was done by Keith Laney. It really highlights the features of this Sphinx, and to give you a brief description, he's sitting upon his perfectly shaped lion's hind legs. He's got a human torso. Around his neck is a image of a falcon's face. He's got winged arms that appear to be holding a human head right in the middle of his chest. His head is crowned, and his face is that of a lion. This concludes part 1 of my 3-part video.